I had teachers that just absolutely changed my life. You know, I didn't have family. I didn't have friends. I had teachers that connected with me. And because of the way they connected with me, they laid a platform in my life. And when my day finally came and I finally had ears to hear truth, their words resonated with me, right? And so I go around the world, really, but certainly around the country, and I share my story, you know, like what I shared yesterday. And educators are always fascinated, right? And one question that I've been getting since I wrote the book, The Power of a Teacher, in 2012 is, what was their secret sauce? How did they do that, Adam? Right? Those women, like with you, and you were that punk kid, and what was their magic, you know? Because, man, if we could distill that and put it in a bottle, I'd love to take a swig of that every day, right? Or to use my wife's language, if we could make that into an essential oil, I would run that through my diffuser, right? The relationship oil, just let it diffuse over me, right? And you know, so teachers are saying, hey, I want that. You know, I want to connect with my kids the way your teachers did. So what's the deal? Tell me what to do. And that's what I love about teachers, is their bottom line question is just tell me what to do, right? And I'll do it. It's great. And so, you know, the more I thought about that, I just thought, I don't know what to tell you, you know, because that's truly what we call in the social sciences a multivariate problem, right? I mean, so I would, if you're saying, okay, Adam, I really want to connect with the student, I'd need to know so much information. Like, I would want to know about you. Like, are you male, female? Are you sort of in your 20s or in your 50s? Did you grow up low SES or high SES? Where are you now? Where do you go to church, right? What was your experience like in that grade? You know, who were your favorite teachers? I would want to know everything about you. So great. And tell me about this kid, right? Well, gifted and talented, slow learner, Latino, African American, gay, straight, you know, low SES, you know, all of that. So, okay, that's you, that's this kid. Oh, well, if I were you, given that constellation of variables, I would do this, right? And it's like, okay, well, that's one teacher with one student, you know, how do you scale that? Well, you don't, you know. So teachers would ask, hey, Adam, what do I need to do? What's the magic? What's the secret sauce? And my answer was, I don't know. You know, it's too complicated, right? And you know, I was okay with that answer for a while, and then I wasn't okay with it, because I thought that's a really good question. You know, that's an essential question. So I started talking to my colleagues in my clinic. You know, the therapists that I work with and the psychologists. And I said, man, I'm getting this question from teachers, and it's a good question, and I don't have a good answer. And the question is, like, how do they connect with kids, right? Like, is there anything, any template or rubric we could share? So we started talking in our staffings about what are the most common things we see in therapy, and what are the most common things we see in schools, whether it is a couple at odds with each other, a parent and a child at odds with each other, a child at odds with other kids, siblings, a teacher with a teacher, an administrator with teachers, like whatever the relationship is. What do we usually see? What are the common denominators, right? And if we can distill that out of these cases that we see, maybe we can come up with a basic framework, a basic structure. That's the ticket. So, you know, I coach track and field, and if you don't coach track and field, you know, and I said, let's say I'm the coach, right, and you're all my athletes. And so great, I'm a track coach, that's what I do. And they say, okay, Adam, but here's the deal. That's your track people, but that's volleyball, that's swimming, this is basketball, this is football, that's, you know, field hockey, and on down the road, right? So you coach them. And I'm thinking, man, I can work with these guys. I don't know what to do with everybody else, right? I don't know how to coach any of those other sports. So here's what I'd do if I had to do it. I would say, I don't know anything about your sport except for track and field. So what I'm going to do is we're going to focus on nutrition, we're going to focus on strength training, we're going to focus on cardio and flexibility. And that's how I'm going to coach you. And if you can improve your nutrition and increase your strength and increase your flexibility and grow your cardio, I'm going to send you back into your sport. And whatever that sport is, you're going to be better at it, right? Because those are just core skills, right? So that's what these 4 relationship skills are that I'm going to be talking to you about, they're sort of the common denominators in any relationship. And you can take these skills back to any relationship, whether it's a friendship, a romantic relationship, parenting relationship, relationship with peers at work, whatever it is, these 4 skills they have to be in place for anything to grow out of that. And if one of these is lacking, then that relationship probably will not reach its full potential. Okay, so we're going to be talking through those 4 skills. And the goal is for us to have relationships that actually work. So here we go. And the deal is on relationships is, you know, we can say, oh gosh, yeah, I want to have great relationships with my kids, and I want to have great relationships with my spouse and my students and all that. And that's fine. But the deal is that relationships take work. Healthy, good relationships take work. You know, and I could say, yeah, I want to run the Boston Marathon. Well, guess what? I'm not going to get to the Boston Marathon at the bottom of a bag of Cheetos, right? I need to go out and do my work. And so you could say, oh, I want great relationships and blah. Okay, great. Are you willing to do the work? That's the question. And the 4 things that I'm going to give you are a lot of work to do, but if you do them and make these your relational disciplines, then you're posturing yourself to be, you're coming to the table saying, I've done the most work I can do on the core elements of me that are posturing me to be most successful with you. That doesn't guarantee that you're going to be relationally successful, because the other person is the unknown variable. We don't know what's going on with that other person, but the point is, let me bring my best version of me to that relationship so that I can sleep well at night and have peace about how I'm living my life, right? So we're going to talk through these 4 skills, no matter what the relationship is. The first one is the skill of reflecting on the right why. Number 2 is the skill of directing the fuel of my emotions. Number 3, the skill of connecting with colleagues, students, and parents. And the 4th is the skill of protecting from colleagues, students, and parents, and anybody else, any other initials that you wrote down. So that's it. We're going to talk about reflecting, directing, connecting, and protecting. It only took me 2 bottles of tequila to find 4 words that rhyme, but by God, I found them. And there they are, right? So that's it. So let's jump right in. We're going to talk about these 4 skills, and as I talk about these 4 skills, I want you to be thinking in these relationships that are potentially life-sucking for you. How can you grow? You know, what do you, how does that person need to change so that you can connect with them, but what do you need to change with inside you so that you can present yourself as well as possible? So here we go. The skill of reflecting on the right why. Moving beyond job and career into calling. And I talked about this yesterday in my keynote, right? A job is just a paycheck. A career is just a job with advancement opportunities. But the calling, right? It's why it's not what, not where, not how, not when. It's why I'm doing what I'm doing. That's calling. So the best definition or the best example I've ever heard of calling, you know, when most of us think of calling, we think of that in a religious context, right? So you think in the Hebrew Bible, Adam or Moses, you know, God speaks to Moses through this metaphor of a burning bush and says, Moses, I am calling you to lead my people out of Egypt into the promised land, right? So the calling in that sense is God speaking to you and telling you what to do with your life, right? And that's totally legit. Regardless of what your religion is, there's this aspect that we enter into that religious system seeking to connect with a higher power, and that higher power gives us an answer or some kind of insight about who we are and why we're on the planet, right? And that's, again, the essence of calling in a spiritual sense. But I think, you know, even for those whose worldview does not ascribe to a transcendent being, even if you're agnostic or atheist or, you know, secular humanist or whatever your truth-finding rubric is, if it doesn't involve a transcendent being, you can still have a deep sense of calling, right? So I was listening to Oprah, Super Soul Sunday. Don't tell anybody I admitted to that, but I love it, right? I do. I mean, it's like, some of it's stupid, but some of it's cool, you know? And so I was listening to Oprah, Super Soul Sunday, and she was interviewing this American pastor about calling, right? And how do we know what we're supposed to do in life? And he said, man, I didn't know what calling was until I learned it from my housekeeper. She had been keeping house for us for 4, 5, 6 years, right? Just a sweet, brilliant woman, you know, did a great job and really, really liked her. And one day she came and she was doing her thing, and I pulled her aside and I said, listen, man, I hope you don't mind me asking this, but have you ever thought that maybe you were called to be more in life than a housekeeper? You know, I mean, you're intelligent, you're competent, you could do so much. And he said, man, she looked at me taken aback. And And she said, are you kidding me? She said, how many people do you know that can walk into as many houses as I can walk into right now and not have the police called on them? She said, my calling in life is to build trust with people so that I can enter into their most sacred, private places and create order where there is chaos. That's my calling. Damn, that's deep. That's deep from a housekeeper. And he said, the light bulb went off. That's why she's so good. Like that's why she does this thing so well, because she did that internal work and figured out, who am I? Why am I on this planet? Oh, it's that. Let me get after it, right? And so the sense of calling, it's about figuring out not what, not where, not when, not how, but why. Why am I actually doing what I'm doing? Okay, so that's calling. Why do I need to reflect? Because like I said yesterday, it's the antidote to the Dunkin' Donuts moment. Those days when I wake up, those semesters when I wake up and I'm not feeling it, right? And I'm thinking like, this is lame, I want to go do something else. Well, you know, if I don't have this root of a calling guiding me and being a rudder on my ship, then I'm just going to do that. Now, I'm going to teach for a little bit. Well, I'm going to go work in a 7-Eleven. Well, I'm going to go try a corporate ladder. Well, I'm going to go sell real estate. Well, I'm going to be a psychologist. And, you know, and you never really land in a place where you're making an impact, right? So calling is what it centered us and it brings us back into the present day. Even when our emotions don't want us to be there, our calling holds us still, right? So we absolutely have to have that. Okay, so how do I do it? Consider your past and your future. So I said this yesterday. My calling as a I do many things as a psychologist, right? Like I do therapy, I do assessments, I work at Texas A&M, I teach classes, I work with athletes, I supervise graduate students, I sit on doctoral committee. I mean, I do all of that, but the icing on my cake is working with educators, right? And so my calling as a psychologist is when I think about educators 35 years ago that said, we're going to make sure we can do everything in our power to make sure that kid has what he needs to be successful. Now, I, as a middle-aged psychologist, look at educators and say, I want to do everything in my power to equip you to be successful with your students. And that's my calling, right? So I think about my past and I think about my future, and then that's where it comes together, right? And so why are you doing what you're doing? And think about this, right? So let's say you're at Walmart and you see somebody that you hadn't seen since high school, you know, many, many years ago. And you say, hey, what's up? Long time no see, great. So how are you? Great. So what are you doing with your life? And he says, oh, I'm killing it. I'm a stockbroker. Didn't you see that BMW, the convertible, the 2020? Yeah, that's me. You know, I'm just rocking it. We live over here in this, 5,000 square foot house, and life couldn't be better, right? How are you? What are you doing with your life? Did you see that 1978 Civic out there? Yeah, teacher, right? Okay, sorry, right? No. Look somebody in the eye and say, are you kidding me? I'm shaping the next generation of America. Like when you and I are sitting in a rocking chair counting our last days, the people that are going to run this place, I trained them, right? That's my calling, is to raise the next generation of people that will steward this thing we call America. That's what I'm doing with my life, right? That's powerful. That's powerful. So the question is, have I honed into a why that I feel proud of, that I can raise as my banner and say, that is me unapologetically, right? So if I don't want to be on my campus, or if I'm there for the wrong reason, I'm not going to have the resources to do relationships, right? If I like, oh, okay, I'll just do this till something better comes along, whatever, I'm just here. Do you really think in that mindset that I'm going to build relationships with anybody? It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen, and I don't do much marital therapy, right? But when I do, I can tell 5 minutes into the first session whether they really want to be there. And I tell them, like, look, I didn't make a commitment to either one of you. I didn't walk the aisle with either one of you. You made the commitment to each other. It's not my job to hold your marriage together. It's yours, right? And if you don't want to be here, don't waste my time, and don't wait. Just go get your lawyers and go on about your life, right? But let's not play games here. So if you don't want to be here, then leave, because whatever I say to you is not going to matter. But if you want to be here, then great. I can give you tools to rebuild trust and to rebuild intimacy, and yeah, we can get this thing right back on the right track. But don't kid yourself and don't waste my time, right? And that's true in anything, in my relationship with myself, in my relationship with my spouse, with my children, with my job, with my calling. If I don't want to be there, I'm not going to do A+ work, right? I'm going to skimp, and as I said yesterday, I'm going to hover just above that line of suck, right? Hoping that I don't get fired. Somebody tweet that. Hover above the line of suck. I'm just joking, don't tweet that. So that's it. If I don't want to be there, bottom line, if I don't want to be there, it's not going to happen. Okay? So the first takeaway, the questions I need to ask myself is, do I have a mission statement? Does my leadership team have a mission statement? Do I have a mission statement for my classroom? Is it something that we talk about regularly? Do we go back and remember why we're here? You know, why are we here? Especially in the difficult times, right? When you're dealing with frustration and anger and all those other intense emotions, that is the best time to reflect and say, oh, yeah, remember, this is why. This is our anchor. This is our rudder. This is our centering point. Okay. So you say, okay, great, Adam, I want the secret sauce. I want what those two, I want what Miss McRoberts and Miss Exley had. Okay, step one, do you really want to be there? If you don't really want to be there, it's not going to happen. So you say, okay, I got it. Yep, no, I've done the soul searching. Check. I really want to be there. I've found my calling. Great, let's go to the next one. Directing the fuel of your emotion. And this is the essence of emotional intelligence, right? And we talked about this a lot yesterday. But the question is, you know, so yes, I really want to be on my campus. Yes, I really want to be in this classroom working with these kids. Yeah, I really, at a deep, deep level, I do. But even that, you know, like, hey, I'm in the trenches now, and this is hard, and that kid kicked me, and that kid spit on me, and that kid called me an F and this and that, and that parent called me an F, and that parent kicked me, right? And this, I didn't know I was signing up for this, and I feel a lot of intense emotions, and they're not really pleasant emotions. Well, what do I do with that, you know? That becomes critical, because what we do with that emotion is instructive to the kids around us, to the adults around us. You know, that's really when we're potentially our most influential as teachers, not of academic content, certainly not just that, but as teachers of life, right? It's when we're intensely emotional. When our affect spikes, it draws attention to us, and then people are saying, I'm looking at you now, I will learn from you now, right? And so what happens is when I get into all this intense emotion, this intense fuel, I'm either going to use that fuel in ways that are helpful or hurtful. And we talked about this a lot yesterday. So I can take a 5-gallon tank of gas, pour it in my car, and give you a ride to the store. And that fuel, that 5-gallon tank of gas, is a blessing. I can take the same 5-gallon tank of gas, pour it around your house, and burn your house down. And that fuel is a curse. The fuel itself has no inherent morality, right? There's no good or bad fuel. It's a question of how am I going to apply it. And the same is true with my emotions. I'm not bad because I feel angry at a student, or because today I just happen to hate this calling that I know I'm called to, but I just hate it, right? There's nothing wrong with that. There's no condemnation in that. That's typical. That's normal, right? The question is, but now that I've owned the emotion, how can I be an adult about directing that emotion in ways that are life-giving, right? That's the real secret, you know? So when those intense emotions spike up, whether it's around a particular person at work or at home, or a particular task at work or at home, or a particular time at work or at home, when all that intense energy starts to build up inside of me, I need to diffuse that emotion in ways that are life-giving and not life-taking. So what do? I put myself on a BIP. And again, we talked about this at length yesterday, right? Identify the feeling, link it with the behavior, and choose a substitute behavior, right? So let's say I am Adam, the Eeyore on your campus, the grump, the guy that's always in a bad mood, always got a cloud over my shoulder, that guy, right? And you're trying to be nice to me. And you say, oh, Adam, how are you? I'm trying to be connected to you and nice to you. And I say, I'm horrible. And let me tell you why I'm horrible. Because I have to work with you bag of idiots, right? And nobody appreciates me. And nobody works as hard as I do. And this place is a sinking ship. And y'all, you know, this is stupid. And the administrator's stupid. And the kids are stupid. And the parents are stupid. And, you know, I think I might just leave next year, right? And you're just thinking, please do, right? And, you know, and so I go off and I just throw up on you, right? Verbally. Well, guess what? I go home and I sleep like a baby, Adam the Eeyore. Why? Because there's no anger pent up inside of me. I puked it all over you, right? And I feel great. There's no story. I can go to sleep just fine. So, okay, great, Adam. So you got your anger out, but look at all the relational damage you did in the process, you know? And we tell kids all the time, like, Well, just because you're angry, that didn't give you the right to kick that kid in the face, right? And so, yeah, okay. So then I, as an adult, say, well, those kids made me mad, that parent made me mad, and that's why I said that mean. So my point is that we engage in some of the same silly behaviors if we're not mindful. So I want to identify the feeling and say, look, Adam, it's okay for you to be angry at work. I get angry at work. But you know what, man, next time, instead of puking that behavior all over, or that toxic stuff all over people, take a deep breath, or 5 deep breaths, breathe in peace and breathe out anger. Try that, Do that, right? And that would be so much more life-giving to you and everyone around you. So I want to identify the feeling, I want to link it with a maladaptive behavior, and then choose a substitute behavior. That's it. And the emotions that we're least comfortable with usually were established in our family of origin, whether you're uncomfortable with anger or whatever it might be. So it's just like kids. Kids are they either act out or they act in with their affect, right? Internalizers or externalizers. Well, those kids grow up to be adults that act out or act in, right? And so the acting out adults end up incarcerated typically, right? So we have a system that deals with them. Or they end up having toxic, dysfunctional relationships. But the acting in people are the quiet sufferers, right? They're the ones that have secret addictions, and they're miserable, and all because they're repressing emotion, and they're stuffing it because they never learned a roadmap about how to express emotions adaptively. And I don't want to act out maladaptively, I want to act out adaptively. And I don't want to internalize maladaptively, I want to internalize adaptively. And there's a way to get my feeling out, and there's a way to hold my feeling in that's life-giving, right? There's a roadmap for all of that. But I need to figure that out, which goes back to yesterday why we said effective SEL starts with adult SEL. I mean, this is it, okay? So, takeaway, if I'm prone to express my emotions inappropriately, I will sabotage my ability to build a healthy relationship. So the deal is this, those kids, they keep it real. And when those kids are in need, they don't care who has the Ph.D. They don't care who has a sidearm and a badge on their chest. They don't care. What they care about is, how have you led your life, adult? Have you lived a life that has earned credibility for me? And if you have, you're who I'm going to go to when I'm stressed out, right? So if I act as the adult in the classroom or on the campus, if I act any kind of fool when I get overwhelmed with this emotion and spew and laugh and all that toxic, sarcastic, nasty verbal stuff, kids are going to see that. And what they're going to think is, I don't care that you're the principal, I don't care that you're the SRO, I don't care that you're Dr. Adam Saenz, Ph.D., Ivy League trained, I don't care, because what I know about you is that you act a fool when you get overwhelmed and you're not safe. I don't want to have anything to do with you, right? So when I do this, I sabotage my ability to build healthy relationships. Even if I'm called into my campus and I have a deep sense of meaning about why I want to be there, if when I get there and I get overwhelmed, if I start acting silly, then I lose my ability to build relationships. It's just that simple. So questions. Who's going to tell you if you're acting like an idiot, right? And can you confront that behavior? So let's look at both of those questions. Number one, so ladies, right? Imagine you're at work, you pull up in the parking lot and you're putting your makeup on and you don't even know it, but your lipstick does that across your cheek, right? And you walk into the building. Wouldn't you hope to God that one of your girlfriends would say, oye, comadre, you need to go into the ladies' room and you got something going on here, right? Could you imagine? But then, or no, let's say you get home and it's 5:30 and you're just pooped and exhausted, right? And you go to the restroom and you're thinking, are you kidding me? I was in 4 ARD meetings today and I had lipstick across my chin. Nobody said anything, right? Yeah, it's that. So the same thing with my behavior. If I'm acting like an idiot and I'm already pretty good at that, I don't need that behavior reinforced in me by people not calling me out on that, I've got to have people, and it's usually back to yesterday's nomenclature from who makes our dream team. It's usually our hero that calls us out. Somebody will tell me, and if I'm acting like an irrational idiot, the first person in my life that will do that for me is my wife. She she's not going to put up with it. We got into a fight one time about a couple of years ago. I still remember. I don't remember what we were fighting about, but it was pretty silly. A, and B, she won. Like she just, it was just like, Adam, like, no, it's done, and she won. Just walk away, right? And a man with, you know, a lot more humility would have walked away, you know, because like you just got your butt kicked. Just leave, you know. But I was so angry, right? And I who lead workshops on emotional regulation was so angry, and so we were quiet, and she was looking at me like, okay, that's your cue, you can leave now. And I said, hold on, remind me again, what license do you have that qualifies you to interpret my behavior? Yeah, right, you know? So, it was a long afternoon. It really was, you know? And so she, without missing a beat, looked at me in the eye and she said, you know, after 23 years, I'd say it's called a marriage license. Now you need to walk out of the room, right? She's not going to put up with it, right? Thank God for people like that. And if I don't have those people that are going to call me out on my stuff, then I'm going to keep acting silly, and nobody's going to keep me in my lane, and that's just not good. And then the second thing is, can you confront that, especially for those of you who are highly agreeable and you just, let's all love each other and hold hands and sing Kumbaya, right? I don't like conflict. I'm a people pleaser. Well, guess what? You know, there are advantages being associated with being highly agreeable, but there are limitations. And one of the limitations is that you're not good at setting boundaries. And if we can't contain this behavior, then what that means is, by definition, we are guilty of contributing to the growth of a toxic culture, because we're not going to call out what needs to be called out, right? So we've got to have the ego strength to say, no, not on my watch, we're not going to do that, right? Okay, so you want to build good relationships with your spouse, with your children, with your ex, with your neighbors, with your kids, with whomever. Awesome. Number one is, do you really want to be there? If you don't want to be there, it's not going to happen. Number two, once you get in there and you start doing that thing and the emotions spike, do you have a good roadmap to manage your emotion like an adult, right? Okay, so that's connecting. I mean, that's directing. So you say, yep, check. I want to be there. Check. I'm managing my emotion well. Then let's go to the third one, connecting. And the last two are sort of the yin-yang, the duality of any healthy relationship. I mean, these things have to be present. Connecting is just about this having an experience that's understood as being shared, right? I think of Legos. You know, my youngest son is he's 17, but when he was younger, he was a Lego fiend. And what fascinated me about Legos was, you know, he would get a set and he would put together in, you know, 28 seconds, and then he would tear it apart and everything would go into these Lego bins, right? And what fascinated me was that no matter when he bought the set, no matter what color, what shape, what size, you could go into this Lego bin over here, reach around, pull out a Lego. You could go into this Lego bin over here, scramble around, pull out, and no matter what it was going to fit together, right? Because the engineer said, wouldn't it be cool if we made parts that were structured to interface? Because when they interface, you can create and design and build something that represents or transcends the meaning of an individual Lego block, right? Wouldn't that be fun? And it is. So I think that's kind of us. I think we're Legos, you know? I mean, honestly, I feel like no matter how old or young we are, no matter how much pigment we have in our skin, no matter who we like to have sex with, right? If you put two people on an island, they're going to find a way to connect. Eventually, they're going to get past their differences, and they're going to realize, oh, we were cut from the same cloth. You know, if there was a designer, he designed us to be, or she or it designed us to be interfaced, right? That's what we do as people. Intimacy is our deepest soul need, right? To be connected one with another, even for people like me who are intensely introverted, right? So that's it. We were designed to be connected. So how do I do it? Well, you know, I'm going to have to go into a little neuropsychology speech here that I touched on yesterday, but we need to be connected, right? I mean, that's what satisfies our soul, being connected. At some level, being connected is essential to the health of my soul and my spirit, right? It's great. So then you say, oh, okay, I need that, but I'm incredibly busy in this postmodern American life that I'm living. right? There's just very little bandwidth for anything extra. So I need to be connected, I'm busy. Well, the thing about being connected, and for anybody, but certainly busy people, is that we connect most naturally and most organically with people who are like us, who look like us, who act like us, who sound like us, who believe what we believe, who act the way we act, who dress the way that we dress, who listen to our music. I mean, that birds of a feather phenomena, right? Because there's safety in that. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. So we know we need to be connected. We're busy, and by default, we connect with people who are like us. So what ends up happening in our busy lives is that if you think about the 3 or 4 or 5 people that you're closest to, they're probably a lot like you. And so the low-hanging relational fruit is similarity. The low-hanging relational fruit that I can just get to and feed my soul are people that are, for me, that are middle-aged Latino men that have a lot of education, that are musicians and have tattoos and love to work on cars and love to hunt and fish, right? I mean, if that's you, I love you already, right? Like, what's not to love, And we're going to hit it off just fine. And so that's who you're going to be connected to. Which is fine until you realize that in your life, in your daily sphere, you have people that don't look like you, that they're not from your generation, they don't believe what you believe, they don't live where you live, they don't worship or not worship where you worship or don't worship, right? They don't value what you value. And so with every degree of difference, there's more and more separation, and it's less and less likely that we, in our busy lives, are going to go out of our way to get to know that person who is so dramatically different, because what could we possibly have in common? That's awkward, it's uncomfortable, and I'm busy. I don't have time to do that work, right? I get it. But he's sitting in the front row of my class. Oh man, right? Or that's my co-teacher now, right? And they're not a replica of Adam's sign. So what do I do with that? Well, this thing about non-contingent communication is the essence of connecting across differences. So contingent communication is communication that's contingent on a task or an activity. It's business management language, right? Adam, did you put your name on the paper? Did you turn that in? Where's your homework? Where's your book, right? What's the rule, Adam? It's all about, managing behavior. And it's good and it's necessary. The problem with contingent communication is that over time, eventually contingent communication becomes contingent on bad behavior. So what that, in a classroom, the way that dynamic plays out is I'm going to engage you verbally, Adam, when I see you doing something wrong, and then I'm going to say, Adam, what's the rule? Adam, do you need a consequence? Adam, do you want to do this or that, right? And so what Adam learns is, oh, if I want my teacher's attention, I have to act out to get it, right? And so it just creates this negative spiral, relational spiral. And then it's like, Adam, he's always in trouble, he can never follow directions, right? Because the language is all contingent communication. Non-contingent communication is communication that is not contingent on a task or an activity, and it sounds like this. Adam, how was your weekend? Adam, did you watch the game last night? Adam, what's your favorite YouTube video, right? Who's your favorite YouTuber? What's your favorite video game? Where'd you get those shoes? Really cute. How's your brother doing, man? I haven't seen him for a while. Tell him I said hi. That kind of communication is not contingent on a task or an activity, and that's what builds intimacy in a relationship, right? And if you doubt that, for those of you who are married, think back to when you were dating, right? So you meet somebody and you're thinking, this might be it. And you start getting serious, right? And then you start dating, and it's like just this stream of non-contingent communication, like, oh, what's your dream? What's your favorite food? Who do you want to be when you grow up? How many kids do you want to? What's your favorite movie? Tell me about your political philosophy. And we stayed up till 5 a.m. on the phone, and time just, right? So that's all non-contingent communication. And then what happens is that kind of communication microwaves intimacy, right? So you feel closer and closer and closer, and then you say, we need to get married. And so then you walk the aisle, and then that first month of marriage, all of a sudden it's signs and signs incorporated, right? You have a business to manage, and the nature of your communication changes, right? Did you pick up the dry cleaning? Did you go grocery shopping? And so now it's signs and it's business management language. There's more of that. And then you have a baby, right? And then it's like, well, what color's the baby's poop? I don't know. Should we call the pediatrician? And you have all these conversations that you don't talk about baby's poop when you're dating, right? And so then So then you have a baby, and then you have 4 of them, and the next thing you know, 20 years, and then it's like, well, we can't afford a car. Well, who's going to send them to driver's ed? Well, who's going to pick them up? Who's going to drop them off? And da-da-da-da-da. Fast forward, it's 20 years, kids are gone, you have the empty nest, and you look at your spouse and you say, who are you? I don't know. My business partner, right? Saenz and Saenz Incorporated. Well, that business we were managing, those kids went on, and we're different people now. We don't know each other, right? And then you have that classic midlife crisis where a couple looks at each other and says, oh, yeah, about us, right? Let's figure that out. So my wife and I, being keenly aware of that dynamic, we try to make a practice of engaging in non-contingent communication. I'll tell you a conversation we've been having a lot lately is we both, we see those people are interacting in that session, and y'all got stuck in this sit and get. Turn to your partner and tell them how boring this is. Sorry. I'm sorry, I got distracted by that noise over there. So my wife and I have been talking about, we both came from pretty dysfunctional families, and we were dating. Her family made that a really, really difficult process, I think because at a deep level, her parents they had been married for many years, and they had a lot of skeletons in their closet, and my wife was their youngest girl, and I think they knew, like, once she's gone, we have to face each other, and they didn't want to do that, so they were trying to sabotage us. It didn't work, right? But my wife and I were saying, so our kids are in college now, and they're going to start bringing home, like, hey, this could be the one kind of thing. So, like, who do we need to be as parents to them of young adults so that we're not that to them? Like, how can we bless their dating relationships and their engagement, and how can we be life givers to our young adult children, right? And what do we need to do now to make sure that we're not coming into that process with them with fears and biases and emotions that are going to contaminate our ability to love them well, right? That conversation will take you into the wee hours of the morning, my friends, especially if you cracked a bottle of wine before you started it, I mean, you get down and dirty with stuff like that, and it goes back to, well, you always do this, well, you never do that, right? Anyway, the whole point of that is that this is what builds relationships. And if I'm living my busy life not mindful of that I'm probably going to default to connecting with people who are like me and who I like, then I'm not going to connect with people who are different, with kids who are different, with adults who are different, and I've got to go out of my way to do this non-contingent communication thing to get to know them. Okay? So that's it. By nature, we're relational, but I've got to be able to build those relationships across differences, not just with the kids that I like, and that's not easy. How well are you doing that? Think about the people that are in your inner circle, the 5 inner circle people that you have. How much are they like you, right? And it's okay if they're like you, but I wonder, so think about who demographically is most unlike you, right? Somebody that votes in exactly the opposite way that you do, who worship or doesn't worship exactly opposite of you, who's not in your generation, whose skin color looks different from you, whose sexual orientation is different from yours. I mean, find every demographic variable and put them all together in an opposite on another end of the continuum from you, and then ask yourself this incredibly difficult question. What can I learn from that person? Right? Oh, that's not easy. That's not easy. And we don't default to that by nature. Okay, so yes, Adam, I want to have good relationships. Awesome. It's a lot of work, right? It's like Boston Marathon work. Number 1, do you really want to be there? Number 2, when things get difficult, are you managing your emotion well? Number 3, if you're doing those 2 things, then are you engaging in non-contingent communication with people who are different than you, right, across differences? And then here's the last one. So this is about connecting. That's about building bridges, right? This is building fences, protecting. Every relationship needs a bridge, and every relationship needs a fence, right? Where we go wrong in relationships, this is a pretty broad rule, it doesn't apply everywhere, but people that are like us in our inner circle, those relationships usually are not as good as they could be because we don't build fences where we should. And in relationships where people that are most unlike us, those relationships don't get deeper because we don't build bridges where we should, right? So it's a question of imbalance, right? I need to build bridges with people who are different, and usually I need to build fences with people who are the same because I don't want to offend them or upset them, right? So let's talk about setting boundaries. It's about establishing what belongs to me, my possessions, my feelings, my thoughts. I own this thing, right? This 1966 version of Adam Lewis Saenz, I own it, right? And because I own it, I decide how it gets treated, right? I decide what you can say to me. I decide how close you can get to me. I decide how much contact we can have or not. I own it, right? And I call the shots. And so there's this thing, this power cycle that goes on. And my boys fish, and I fish, and my daughter's humored me a couple of times, but they don't fish. But my boys fish, right, with me. And when they were in elementary school, I took them into my shop, and I said, hey guys, check this out. Those rods and reels, I got those at Walmart, and they cost $20 to replace, right? They're not very expensive. That's where you're going to start, right? And when I see that you can treat those well, and that you're not going to dig holes in the backyard with them, and you're not going to leave them out in the dew, and that you can land a fish with them, then guess what? I'm going to let you use those rods and reels, and I got those at Academy. And those are a little more expensive, right? But when you try those, you're going to love it because you're going to feel the fish bite. You're going to be able to set the hook. The action on the rod is going to be good. You're going to be able to reel really well, and you're going to land more fish, and you're going to love it. And I said, and then on this wall, this is my Cabela stuff, and that's really, really high dollar. I said, once you learn how to use my Academy stuff and treat it well, you still don't get my Cabelas. That's mine. And when you're a grown man and you're making your own money, you go buy your own $500 rig, right? And you do whatever you want, right? But the point is that value determines function, right? If it's a $500 rod and reel, you're not going to dig holes in the backyard, right? And so that's true with people. And I can tell a lot about people because of what I do for a living in pretty quick order. And you can tell people that think too highly of themselves, and you can tell people who think too lowly of themselves. We radiate that energy. The bottom line is that we're all Cabelas, right? We all have high and equal value. The problem is that some people think they're Cabelas and others aren't, right? Like or maybe I am the Cabela rod and you're like junk. And then other people think, well, I'm the junk and you're the Cabelas, right? But we're all Cabelas, right, in this model. And that's important because I'm communicating that to the world, what I think of myself. And if I think I'm junk, I'm going to radiate that energy to the world. And then when it comes to setting boundaries, people are going to say, why should I listen to you? You know, you don't even, whatever. You're not going to enforce this boundary. You don't care about yourself. And then I say, to reinforce the script I have, that I have no value. See, when I set boundaries, people they walk all over me. That just confirms to me that I don't have value, right? And that's the negative feedback loop. Versus the person that values themselves not above others, but as much as others, and says, no, you're not going to treat me that way. Here's the boundary. Once you learn to treat me, I'll let you back in. And that person pushes the boundary and pushes it. I say, no, really, I set up, no, seriously, you stay over there, and this isn't going to happen. And then they say, oh, he's serious about the boundary. And I say, well, yes, I'm serious. I own this thing, and I value it, and I'm not going to let you mistreat it. And so then I say, see, I have value. When I set boundaries, people respect my boundaries because I have value, right? So one way or the other, we're going to reinforce the script that we're running deep inside at a subconscious level, right? So that's a lot of how well we set boundaries boils down to our sense of self and our sense of self-worth specifically, okay? So, got to set boundaries. How do I do it? I name my limit, I practice clear, respectful communication, and I seek support. I'll tell you this lesson I learned about setting boundaries, literally setting a boundary, and then we'll finish up and we'll have Q&A. And somebody's going to get a free book. My clinic now, it's in College Station. So Bryan College Station is one community, right? And most people know College Station for Texas A&M. But it's just one big, metroplex, Bryan College Station, about 250,000 people, right? And so my office was in Bryan before. And what happened was there was this row of houses that was on this commercial road that had, a long time ago, they were residential properties, but the city rezoned them and made them commercial. So whoever bought them had to put a business there. And I was looking for a place to start my private practice about 15 years ago. And Found this cute little house, and thought, yeah, it's great, little, 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, and it was built, in the 50s, and it had this really cool, like, red oak hardwood floors and crown molding, and like this Victorian feel. Really liked it, and then my office was this den that had been added on to the back that had a row of windows looking out to a green belt and a fireplace, and it was just like, I mean, if you had to be in therapy, that was the room to do it, right? Because it just soothed everybody, and it soothed me. It was like a sanctuary. So the one house next door, it was the people that owned the house, they lived out of town, and it was just sort of vacant, and they would show up on game days, for football. Never really saw them that much. Real sweet people. Well, next door on the other side was a lady that was a nurse, and I met her right away, and her name was Jane. And I'll tell you what, man, you did not have to be Sigmund Freud to figure out that Jane's elevator wasn't going all the way up, right? And so I met her, and like her family had owned that property for a while, and she was just so disorganized, like in a, not like in a scattered way, but in like a makes you wonder kind of way, And I was here, good morning, Jane. Good morning, Doc. She called me, doctor is what she called me. Good morning, doctor. How you doing, Jane? I'm good. I'm going to go to Walmart. These trees are so big, but it'll be a beautiful day when the clouds come. And you're just like, I don't know what that meant, but whatever, like, you go that way and I'm going to go this way. And so that was that. And I'm like, I don't want to deal with you, right? So it was fine. It was fine. So I started calling her Crazy Jane. And so it was me and Crazy Jane. And then, like, a year later or so, she gets a boyfriend. This guy starts showing up, and I see him walking around, right? And all right, Crazy Jane's got a boyfriend. So I meet him, and his name is Mike. And again, you didn't have to be Sigmund Freud to figure out Mike had issues, I mean, this guy just radiated this angry, toxic, negative energy, and he always reeked of alcohol, and just a bully, and so deeply unpleasant, and then to make matters worse, he was every bit of like 4'8" and had this huge Napoleon complex, right? And I was like, okay, I see why y'all make sense together, and I don't want to have anything to do with either one of you, right? So okay, so y'all do your thing, I'll do mine. So one day it was a Sunday, and I was in the back with my son, and we were doing some work in the green belt and trimming some bushes, and so I called it, his name was Mike, I called him Mean Mr. Mike. Mean Mr. Mike and Crazy Jane had a dog that I called Cujo, right? And Cujo was like this rabid beast, and he would keep Cujo chained up into the back. And my son and I were back there doing work, and Cujo was just barking, like foaming at the mouth, barking, and it was getting on my nerves. And I said, so I'm going to go inside and get some water. I'll be back. So I went in, got some water. I was sitting in my office looking out into the green belt through my windows, and my son decided to take a break, so he was coming in. Well, as he walked by shouting Cujo, he shushed him, like you do with a dog, shh, that, right, shh. And he came in, and Mean Mr. Mike saw my son shush Cujo, and it pissed him off, right? So he came over to my property and walked into that back office through another door. He didn't know I was in the room, and he saw my son, and he goes off on my son. Young man, I don't know what the hell you think you're doing, but don't you ever taunt my dog again. That was his word, taunt my dog again, because I guarantee you that dog has a good memory. And I don't know, someday he might just happen to get off his leash, and he will remember who you are, and it will be a bad day for you. Don't you ever do that again, screaming. Do you understand? And it scared my son. He was shaking, and he said, yes, sir. And so Mean Mr. Mike said, you're damn right. Turned around and walked off, right? And I said, first of all, nobody, and I mean nobody talks to my kids that way, but you're going to come on my property in my office? Hell no, 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 right? And he didn't know I was in the room. So I followed him back to his property, and I said, hey, Mike, what's up? He said, I was just telling your son, warning him about my dog. I said, oh, you lying sack. That's not what you said. And I said, okay. I said, Mike, I'm not sure what happened, but it won't happen again. I'll tell my son to respect your dog. He said, all right. And I said, I want you to understand something too. If your dog puts any part of its foot or body on my property, you and I are going to have problems. I don't want your animal on my property, right? So please respect that. And he freaked out. Oh, how dare you set a boundary with me? I'm the bully. I'm the rageaholic. I'm the alcoholic. I'm the one in control. And it made him mad that I set a boundary, right? But I was clear. I practiced clear, respectful communication. I named my limit. So he goes off on me, starts screaming at me, cussing at me. And so as soon as he raised his voice and used profanity, I put my hands up like that, and I said, Mike, I'm ending this conversation. And I turned around and walked off. Oh, son. Fuel to fire, right? So he's going off, so whatever. And I thought, you know, that was unpleasant, but it's done. I set my boundary. He knows where I stand. We're good, right? That was Sunday. Monday, show up to my office, get out of my truck. And I look in my backyard into the back, and I see through my windows, what do I see? I see Cujo on a 100-foot leash on my property, right? So mean Mr. Mike, you know, he's doing that, but he's doing that, right? I said, all right. I said, you know what, man, I think it's on. I think it's on. So I got my phone, and I called animal control, and I went back to the backyard where Cujo was just barking, and I got right up to Cujo, who was going crazy, and I said, this is Dr. Adam Saenz at Oakwood Counseling. There's an animal on my property. I don't feel safe. Please help. Within 5 minutes, animal control came out. They issued Mean Mr. Mike 2 citations. Number 1, you can't have your animal on somebody else's property. That's illegal. And number 2, you can't have your animal tied up more than 30 feet away from shelter and water. And he had him tied up in the backyard, right? Right? Dr. Adam Saenz 2, Mean Mr. Mike 0, right? And I said, man, I tried to be nice, but you didn't respect that, so now I'm going to get support. And we got animal control, and now it bit you in the butt. So now we're clear, right? Good. That was so unpleasant. That was Monday. Tuesday, come back to my office, right? And now there's Mean Mr. Mike just waiting for me. And he's on his side of the fence in the front yard. And he's got his arms on the fence. And he's got Cujo. And now he's got son of Cujo. He's got 2 dogs. And he says, hey, Doc, guess what? I got my dogs here. And they're on my property. And there's nothing you can do about it. And I said, all right. You know. And he said, and here's the deal. I'm going to leave them here. And every time you have a patient come or go, they're going to bark and raise hell and terrorize you. So, all right, you know, so he starts doing that, bark, bark, bark. So finally I called one of my friends who's a city planner. I said, can I build a fence, a picket fence? And he said, yeah, it's commercial property, do whatever you want. And I said, how high can I make it? And he says, as high as you want. I said, all right. So I called my friend, we get my property surveyed, legally determine what's my boundary, what's my limit. And so so my other friend, construction worker, comes out, he starts, you know, digging post holes and laying it all out. Well, me, Mr. Mike, saw that, he freaked out, right? So he comes out, and so then he starts saying, you know what, I don't call 911. I have a gun and I don't know how to use it. And I'm like, all right, you're going to go there. Okay, so I call the cops. They come out. He's a frequent flyer, you know, whatever. So then finally, you know, it's time to put up the pickets. And so my friend Scott, the contractor, said, all right, well, what size pickets do you want? And I said, you know what? I was so mad at this point. I said, I don't even have a number in mind. I just want a big-ass fence. Just make it that, right? Whatever number that needs to be. So he gets these huge 10-foot picket, right? And bam, just starts nailing up. I said, finally, thank God, right? So now the dogs didn't have visual access to the property. They weren't barking. Finally, we're done, you know? And so what happened, though, after the whole drama was over, I felt myself just boiling in anger and rage. And I'd pull up and I'd see the fence, and I would just think, oh, he's such an idiot. He's so toxic, and she's so crazy and stupid. And man, why can't they just leave? Why don't they, you know, whatever? And how did I get stuck next to them? And blah, 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 blah. And then what I did was, I'm really proud of this. I went to PetSmart, and you know those beepers you can get that hurt dogs' ears when they bark? I got 2 of them. And so I'd wake up in the morning, and I'd get there, and so I'd bang on the fence where the Cujo was, and bee, like, take that, you suck, Cujo, right? And that was me, right? And so one morning, I pulled up into my office, and took some deep breaths, and then I got really quiet, and what some people would describe as a very still, small voice said, hey, Adam Saenz, right? Yep. Licensed psychologist, right? Yep. Wrote a book on how to manage your emotions. Yep, that's me. So, all right, I get the point. I need to do something about this that's adaptive and not maladaptive. So what do I do? Well, have you ever heard that phrase, hurt people hurt people? Yeah, right? So, which means when we act in hurtful ways, we're often acting out our own pain. I thought, man, if that's true, then Mean Mr. Mike and Crazy Jane, they got to be hurting, you know, to be as toxic as they are. So what do I do with that? Well, what heals that is love, love is the answer, you know? So, okay. So they need love. And what about you, Adam? You got pretty twerked about all that. Maybe you need some love. Yep, I need love, you know? So that was my meditation when I would pull into work every morning, was love, right? I want love for, and hey, Adam, is there any way you can like stop being pejorative in how you refer to them? Can they just be Jane and Mike? Can you extend to them that dignity, right? Okay. So it's Mike and Jane and Adam now. And the meditation I came up with was the visualization as I would pull up in the parking lot and I would imagine a cloud over their property that was filled with love. And I would imagine it dumping love on their property, like flooding their front yard and their backyard and their house with love, 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 love. And I would imagine them marinating and swimming and soaking in this love. And that was just sort of like this visual image for me to remind me that they're suffering and they needed healing, right? And me along with that, right? And so everything was great. And then like I remember like 3 or 4 months after I started practicing that meditation, got to my office, and it was like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I mean, I'd been doing my thing, and I looked up and I thought, ha! I have not had a single thought about Mike, Jane, or Cujo all day, right? And I realized, victory at last, I'm done, right? Like this thing's really behind me, you know? Great. So then, you know, a couple years go by, and I didn't hear much from them, and, you know, so they went their way, I went mine, and then our practice got too big, and I was looking for a bigger building, and it was the weirdest thing. Within a period of about 2 weeks, I had a for sale sign in my front yard, and Mike and Jane had a for sale sign. And one morning I was over there, Sunday morning I was at my office, I was doing some paperwork, and I hear a knock on the door, open the door, and it's Mike. And I hadn't seen him for years, you know. And he had this real sheepish look on his face, you know. And I said, hey, Mike, how you doing? He said, hey, Doc, man, I'm all right. Hey, you got a minute? I said, yeah, man, come on in. So I got 2 things, man. First of all, I'm here to apologize. He said, I stopped going to meetings, man, years ago, and I know I cost you a lot of time and money and emotion, and I'm here to apologize. Will you forgive me? And I said, oh, Mike, yeah, man, I forgive you. It's really, really kind of you to extend that. And we shook hands. I said, thank you. That means a lot. And then he said, here's the second thing. You know, Jane and I, man, we're going to go our separate ways. We're going to sell the property, but we thought it'd be nice to offer you first option, you know. I know you got your for sale sign, but maybe you want to buy our place and you can do something and grow your practice that way. And I said, oh, Mike, that's really kind. Let's go check it out. And so I went over to this property, and we're looking around, and I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to redesign everything to meet code and how we could make a waiting room and treatment rooms and all that. And so we're walking around. We get to this one room, and out of nowhere, man, Mike says, he said, man, Doc, it's a tough week for me this week. I said, really? He said, yeah, man, I just found out my son, man, he just got convicted of his 3rd felony, and he's gone, man. They're going to lock him up and throw away the key. And he's 24 years old, 24 years old, and this is his 3rd felony, and he's done. And I said, man, Mike, I'm so sorry to hear that. And he said, yeah, I've tried. We tried when he was young to get him into treatment. We tried everything, and it never worked. And now here he is, and his life is shot. And it tears me apart as his father. And I said, man, I'm really sorry to hear that. He said, yep. And then he said, 10 minutes, yeah, thank you. He said, and the timing couldn't be worse. This is the 5th year anniversary of the death of my brother. I said, really? And he said, yeah, man, me and my brother, we were just doing yard work. We went to go get a beer, went to the gas station. We were in his little truck. He was driving. We got a little 6-pack. We're pulling out. The last words out of his mouth were, oh, shit. And when he said that, I turned, and we got T-boned by an 18-wheeler. He was killed on impact. When I turned, his head hit my jaw, broke my jaw, and I was stuck with his body on me for 2 hours while they tore me out with the jaws of life, and I got life flighted to Memorial Hospital in Houston. And my body doesn't work right because of that, right? And it's just been a real tough week. And I said, oh, Mike, I'm so sorry to hear that, man. So anyway, we ended up leaving, and I didn't buy the property. But when I got back to my office, I was overcome with shame. So, oh my gosh, Adam, you know, all these years of you hating on Mike and Jane, and you never once listened to a story. You never once engaged in non-contingent communication. It was always about, you're the good guy and he's the bad guy. Different people like him, they're what's wrong with the world, and people like you are what's right with the world. And all you did was judge him and say, let me literally build a fence and keep you over there, right? because you're the idiot. And I was so ashamed that I had missed the boat, right? And so then at the very end, I remember he sold his place, I sold mine, and he came over one last time, and he said, "Hey, Doc, man, I just want to say my goodbyes. You've been a great, great neighbor to me, and thank you, And I said, "Yeah, great." And so we sort of shook hands, did the little bro hug thing, and he left. And I saw in his spirit, and I thought, man, he's a sweet guy. That there was a real sweet part of him that's always been there. But I never bothered to do the work to find it, He's the kind of guy I'd have a beer with. He's the kind of guy I'd have coffee with, But I was just so caught up in how inconvenient he was to me, right? You're just a thorn in my flesh. I don't want to deal with you. So all of that is to say, and I'll end with this, the people that are different, that we really need to get to know, they're thorns in our flesh. Let's start by building bridges. Let's not start by building fences, right? Let's start with bridges and get to know them. Build the bridge and then see what happens. And if you have to build a fence, then build it, but start with the bridge. So, in conclusion, it started with that kid right there who became that man because of these people, teachers that I had along the way that did build relationships with me. And if you asked them, what was your magic? This guy named Adam gave a talk and talked about how you influenced him. I don't think they would say, well, my magic was love and logic, capturing kids' heart, conscious discipline. I think they would say this. We knew why we were there. Right? We knew why we were there. And if we were cats and we had 9 lives to live, we'd probably be an educator 5 of them because it was so deeply rewarding for us. And when things got difficult, and they often did, we just decided we're going to manage our emotions like an adult. We're not going to shame anybody. We're not going to hurt anybody. We're not going to punish anybody. And we're going to connect, especially with those kids who roll into Katie with their mullet pulled back into a ponytail, 2 earrings, and a Metallica shirt, right? We're going to go out of our way to get to know that kid. And we're going to protect, and we're not going to put up with nonsense. Kids know we mean business, and no matter who they are, if they break the rules, we're going to get consequences. That's it. So all of these initials you have on your table, on your paper, they represent thorns in your flesh, and probably for good reason. Ask yourself, what can you do differently with those people? Have you reflected on why? Have you directed your emotions adaptively? Have you connected with them appropriately? And have you set boundaries the way that you need to set them? That's work that's on you. It's not on them. It's on you, right? And if you do those things, it doesn't guarantee you that you're going to have relational success, but it guarantees you that when you lay your head down on the pillow at night, you can sleep with peace knowing that, hey man, I was a good steward of my life. I did everything I could do to present myself to optimize relational connection, right? And that's it. Raise your hand if you have ever written a review on Amazon for a book. Okay? Raise your hand now. Out of that population, raise your hand now if you were not in my session yesterday and you did not, is anybody that, okay, good. Now, you keep your hands up if you were not in my session and you've written a review on Amazon, right? Who is that? Okay, out of you folks, I'm going to give somebody a book who will promise to write an honest review on Amazon. My publisher gave me some copies to give away. So raise your hand high. I've got 1 book and I've got 38 hands. Raise your hand if today is your birthday. Raise your hand if your birthday was this week. Raise your hand if your birthday was this month out of those people. Nobody, really?
Next week.
What's that?
Next week.
Next week is your birthday? And you promise you'll write me an honest review on Amazon?
It is next week.
Yes? Okay, you promise in front of all of your colleagues, right? Till death do us part. There you go. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Thank you all. Appreciate y'all.